The thunder of hooves was the only warning Vanessa Cole had before they came, three riders appearing like specters against the dusky horizon of Wyoming Territory, 1873. She clutched her 3-month-old baby tighter against her chest, instinctively backing toward the crude cabin that had been her prison for nearly a year. "Whoa there," called the lead rider, raising his palm in a gesture of peace. "Madam, we don't mean no trouble." Vanessa's heart hammered wildly as the men dismounted. The tallest of them, broad-shouldered with a weathered tan and eyes the color of a summer storm, approached slowly. His movements were cautious, like someone approaching a wounded animal. "Miss, are you all right out here?" His voice was deep but gentle. "Name's Clayton Northwood. These are my trail hands, Thomas and Benjamin." Vanessa opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. The familiar tightness gripped her throat, the same paralysis that had struck her the day she'd given birth alone in this godforsaken place. She had not spoken a single word since. Clayton studied her with concern etched across his features. His eyes fell to the bundle in her arms. "That's a mighty small little one you got there." The baby stirred, letting out a soft coo that seemed to soften the hard lines of the cowboy's face. "We've been tracking some cattle rustlers," explained Thomas, the shorter of the companions. "Trail led us out this way. Didn't expect to find a woman and child out here all alone." Vanessa took a hesitant step back, clutching her baby closer. "Miss, you don't need to fear us," Clayton said softly, removing his hat. His dark hair fell across his forehead. "But I've got to ask, are you here of your own choosing? You seem—" He paused, searching for the right words. "You seem like you might be in some trouble." Tears welled in Vanessa's eyes. She wanted desperately to tell them everything, how her husband had brought her to this isolated homestead before abandoning her 6 months pregnant, how she delivered her baby alone during a blizzard, how grief and isolation had stolen her voice. But the words remained locked inside her. Instead, she pointed frantically toward the cabin, then gestured to her throat, shaking her head. "You can't speak?" Clayton asked gently. Vanessa nodded, relief washing over her that someone understood. "All right then," Clayton said, replacing his hat. "Whatever's happened here, we can't leave a woman and baby alone. Night's coming on. Would it be all right if we made camp nearby? Maybe help out a bit come morning?" Vanessa hesitated, studying the man before her. There was something in those storm gray eyes, a steadiness, a decency that she hadn't seen in a long while. She nodded slowly. "Much obliged," Clayton replied. "We'll set up just over there, where you can see us plain. You need anything at all, you just come get us, you hear?" That night, Vanessa sat by her window, watching the men's campfire flickering in the darkness. Her baby slept peacefully in the crude cradle she'd fashioned from an old trunk. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel something like hope. Morning brought Clayton to her door with fresh game for breakfast. "Hope you don't mind, madam," he said, holding up 2 rabbits. "Thought you might appreciate some fresh meat." Vanessa stepped aside to let him in. The cabin was sparse but meticulously clean. She'd done her best with what little she had. Clayton's eyes fell on the baby, now awake and gurgling in the makeshift cradle. A smile transformed his face. "Now there's a fine-looking little one. Boy or girl?" Vanessa held up one finger. "One? Oh, a boy then." Clayton guessed. She nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Strong little fella," Clayton observed. "Got a name for him?" The smile vanished. Vanessa's hand moved to her throat, and she shook her head sadly. Clayton's brow furrowed as understanding dawned. "You've named him in your heart, but you can't say it out loud?" Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. "I've seen it before," Clayton said quietly. "My sister lost her voice for near a year after she lost her husband. Shock does strange things to a person." Vanessa looked at him with new interest. Someone who understood. "If you'd be willing, madam, we could help get you to town. Can't be good for you or the little one out here all alone." Vanessa bit her lip, considering. Then she pointed to a small trunk in the corner of the room and nodded. "You'll come with us then?" Clayton asked, relief evident in his voice. She nodded again, more decisively this time. That afternoon, with her meager possessions loaded onto Clayton's spare horse, they set off toward the town of Riverbed, a 3-day journey to the south. Clayton fashioned a sling so that Vanessa could carry her baby close while riding. His consideration touched something deep within her. By the first evening, They had established a kind of language between them. Gestures and expressions that conveyed basic needs and ideas. Clayton seemed to understand her better than the others, anticipating her needs before she could even indicate them. As they sat around the fire that night, Clayton told stories of his ranch, the Double Inn, and his dreams of expanding it someday. "My pa built it from nothing," he explained, his face illuminated by the dancing flames. "Started with 10 acres and 6 cattle. Now it's near 500 acres, but there's always more that can be done." Vanessa listened, entranced by the animation in his voice when he spoke of home. It had been so long since she'd allowed herself to think of such things: home, future, dreams. The baby began to fuss, and Vanessa rocked him gently. "May I?" Clayton asked, holding out his arms. Hesitantly, Vanessa passed her son to him. The cowboy cradled the infant with surprising tenderness for such large, calloused hands. "Hey there, little man," he whispered. "You're giving your mama quite a journey, aren't you?" The baby quieted immediately, staring up at Clayton with wide, curious eyes. Something shifted in Vanessa's heart at the sight of a tiny crack in the wall of grief she'd built around herself. On the second day, disaster struck. They were crossing a shallow stream when Thomas's horse spooked at a snake, rearing suddenly. In the chaos, Vanessa's horse stumbled, sending her tumbling into the water. Clayton reacted instantly, lunging to catch the baby before he could hit the water. Vanessa surfaced, gasping and terrified, to find Clayton holding her son safely above the stream. "I got him," Clayton assured her, his voice steady despite the panic in his eyes. "He's just fine, see? Not even wet." That night, after they'd dried off and calmed down, Clayton sat beside her at the fire. "You know," he said quietly, "I lost my wife and son 4 years ago. Childbirth." He stared into the flames. "Thought I'd never feel whole again." Vanessa touched his arm gently, a gesture of understanding and sympathy. "What I'm trying to say is, I know what it is to be broken," he continued. "And I know it can mend, given time. Your voice will come back when it's ready." She wished desperately that she could thank him properly, with words that might convey the depth of her gratitude. Instead, she squeezed his hand, hoping he understood. On the third day, they crested a hill and saw a riverbed spread out in the valley below, a small but thriving town with proper wooden buildings and even a church steeple rising above the other rooftops. "Not much," Clayton said, "but they've got a doctor and a decent boarding house. Thought we might get you settled there until you decide what you want to do next." The town's citizens stared curiously as the group rode down the main street. Vanessa felt exposed after so many months of isolation, but Clayton stayed close, his presence reassuring. Dr. Martin Wilkes, a kindly older man with wire-rimmed spectacles, examined both Vanessa and the baby thoroughly. "They're both undernourished," he told Clayton privately, though Vanessa could hear his words from where she sat. "But otherwise healthy, considering. The woman suffered a trauma of some kind that's affected her speech. It's psychological, not physical." "Will she speak again?" Clayton asked. "Most likely, when she's ready," the doctor replied. "These things can't be rushed." Clayton arranged a room for Vanessa at the boarding house and paid for 2 weeks in advance. "Just to give you time to find your feet," he explained. "The lady who runs this place, Mrs. Fletcher, is good people. She'll help you out." That evening, as Vanessa sat on the edge of her bed, a real bed, the first she'd slept in for months, she realized with a sudden, sharp clarity that Clayton would be leaving. He'd done his good deed, bringing her to safety, but he had a ranch waiting. The thought of his departure made her chest ache. A soft knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Clayton stood in the hallway, hat in hand. "Just wanted to check on you and the little one before we head out tomorrow," he said. Panic flared in Vanessa's eyes. She grabbed his arm, shaking her head frantically. "What is it?" he asked, concerned. She pointed at him, then at herself and the baby, her meaning clear. "Don't go. I've got to get back to my ranch," he explained gently. "I've been away too long already." Tears spilled down her cheeks. After all they'd been through, the thought of facing this new chapter alone terrified her. Clayton's expression softened. "Tell you what," he said after a moment. "I need to check on things at home, but I can come back in a week or so to see how you're faring. Would that be all right?" Relief flooded through her, and she nodded eagerly. True to his word, Clayton returned 8 days later, riding into town with saddlebags full of supplies and a wooden rocking chair strapped awkwardly to his horse's back. "Thought you might need this," he said sheepishly, as he maneuvered the chair through the boarding house door. "For when the little one's fussing." Vanessa's heart swelled at the gesture. During his absence, she'd begun working at the boarding house to earn her keep, helping with cooking and cleaning while Mrs. Fletcher watched the baby. The older woman had taken an immediate liking to both of them. "That man's sweet on you," Mrs. Fletcher observed after Clayton had departed to the saloon for the night. "Rode all that way just to bring a rocking chair? HMPF. Never saw such foolishness." But her eyes were kind as she said it. Over the next 3 months, Clayton made the journey to Riverbed regularly, always bringing some small gift, a length of fabric for a new dress, a silver rattle for the baby, seeds for the small garden Vanessa had started behind the boarding house. Each visit lasted longer than the last, and with each departure, the ache in Vanessa's heart grew stronger. She found herself watching the road for hours after he'd disappeared from sight, the baby balanced on her hip. "You know, Mrs. Fletcher said one evening as they washed dishes together, that boy of yours needs a proper name." Vanessa's shoulders slumped. She knew it better than anyone. "What's holding you back, child? You can write, can't you? Just write his name down." Vanessa shook her head vehemently. She tried dozens of times, but her hand would shake so badly the pencil would fall from her fingers. It was as if naming him would make all that had happened real: her husband's betrayal, the terrible isolation, the fear that had gripped her when labor began with no one to help her. "Well, he can't go through life as baby forever," Mrs. Fletcher sighed. "Perhaps Mr. Northwood might have an idea or two." When Clayton arrived for his next visit, he found Vanessa sitting in the rocking chair, tears streaming down her face. The baby lay sleeping peacefully in his cradle, oblivious to his mother's distress. "What's happened?" Clayton asked, kneeling before her. "Are you hurt? Is it the little one?" She shook her head, then pointed to the baby and made a writing motion with her hand. "His name?" Clayton guessed. "You're upset about his name?" Vanessa nodded miserably. "Mrs. Fletcher mentioned something about it," he admitted. "I didn't want to pry, but does he not have one yet?" She tapped her temple, then her throat, trying to convey that the name existed in her mind but couldn't make its way out. Clayton considered this for a long moment. "My ma used to say that sometimes, when something's too big to say aloud, you need to let someone else carry it for a while." He took her hands in his. "If you trust me, maybe you could show me his name somehow? Not write it, but show me." Vanessa furrowed her brow, considering. Then her face lit up with an idea. She hurried to her small trunk and pulled out an old, worn Bible, one of the few possessions she'd brought from the cabin. She opened it, flipping through the pages with purpose until she found what she was looking for. She pointed to a name in the text. Clayton leaned forward to read. "Samuel?" She shook her head and pointed again, more specifically. "Elijah." Clayton tried again. Vanessa's face fell. This wasn't working. "Wait," Clayton said suddenly. "Do you have paper? Maybe you could give me hints? Like a game?" She brightened at this idea, nodding enthusiastically. Mrs. Fletcher provided paper and pencil, and soon they were engaged in an elaborate game of drawn clues. Vanessa sketched a crude star, then pointed to the sky. "Star? Night? Heaven?" Clayton guessed. She shook her head, then pointed more emphatically at the morning sky outside. "Morning star," Clayton tried. "The east." She nodded excitedly, then drew what appeared to be a ray of light. "East? Light? Dawn?" Clayton continued guessing. Vanessa clapped her hands together. "Dawn," Clayton confirmed. "His name is Dawn?" She shook her head, then sketched a crude figure of a man. "A man of the dawn?" Clayton puzzled it out. "A man from the east?" Frustration showed on Vanessa's face. She underlined her drawing of the light rays multiple times. "The light itself?" Clayton asked. "The dawn light." "Oh, is it Dawson?" Vanessa's face transformed with joy. She nodded vigorously, tears welling in her eyes again, but these were different tears. "Dawson," Clayton repeated softly, glancing at the sleeping infant. "That's a fine name. Strong like him." Vanessa pointed at Clayton, then back to the baby. "You want me to tell him?" Clayton asked, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You want me to say his name to him?" She nodded, her expression pleading. Clayton moved to the cradle and gently lifted the sleeping baby. The child stirred but didn't wake. nestling against the cowboy's broad chest. "Hello there, Dawson," Clayton whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "It's nice to finally know your name, little man. Your mama's been keeping it safe for you." The baby's eyes fluttered open at the sound of his name, and his tiny mouth curved in what might have been a smile. Clayton looked up at Vanessa, his eyes shining. "He knows it," Clayton said softly. "He knows his name." Something broke loose inside Vanessa, then a dam that had been holding back not just her voice, but everything else. Grief, fear, hope, love. Her lips parted, and for the first time in nearly a year, sound emerged. "Dawson," she whispered, the word raspy but unmistakable. "My Dawson." Clayton's eyes widened in astonishment. "Vanessa?" "Dawson James," she continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "After my father." She crossed the room on unsteady legs and placed her hand on Clayton's arm, where he cradled her son. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice breaking with emotion. That evening, as they sat together on the boarding house porch, Vanessa told Clayton everything about her husband Arthur's dreams of striking it rich in the West, how the harsh realities had turned him mean and ultimately driven him to abandon her, about the terrible night she'd given birth alone, and how grief had stolen her voice when she tried to name her son aloud. "I was so afraid," she admitted, the words flowing more easily now. "I thought if I named him, it would make it real that we were truly alone. That Arthur was never coming back. And now?" Clayton asked gently. "Now I know we're not alone," she replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "And I'm glad Arthur isn't coming back." Clayton took her hand, his calloused thumb stroking her palm. "I've been thinking," he said cautiously. "My place is too big for just one person. Gets lonely, especially in winter." Vanessa's heart quickened. "I know it's sudden," he continued, "but I've never been more certain of anything. You and Dawson. You've brought something back to life in me that I thought was gone forever." "Clayton," she began, but he held up his hand. "Let me finish, please. I'm not asking for promises right now. Just, would you consider coming to visit the Double Inn? Stay a while, see if you might like it there? If you don't, I'll bring you right back here, no questions asked." Vanessa looked into his earnest face, this man who had rescued her in more ways than he knew, who had helped her find her voice again. "Yes," she said simply. "We would like that very much." 2 weeks later, they crested a hill much like the one where she'd first glimpsed Riverbed. Before them stretched the Double Inn Ranch, a sprawling property with green pastures, a sturdy main house, and several outbuildings nestled against the backdrop of distant mountains. "It's beautiful," Vanessa breathed, Dawson secure in his sling against her chest. "It's home," Clayton replied, a question in his voice. "Yes," she said, reaching for his hand. "I believe it could be." The ranch hands greeted them warmly, especially Clayton's foreman, Robert, who'd been running things in his absence. They'd prepared the house for Vanessa and Dawson's arrival, and someone had even fashioned a proper crib for the baby. That night, after Dawson was sleeping peacefully in his new bed, Vanessa joined Clayton on the porch. The vast Wyoming sky spread above them, scattered with stars so bright and numerous they seemed close enough to touch. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," Clayton said quietly. "After losing Sarah and our baby, I thought that part of me was done. Then I found you and Dawson, and everything changed." "We found each other," Vanessa corrected gently. "And we both needed finding." Clayton turned to her, taking her hands in his. "I know it hasn't been long, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, Vanessa. You and Dawson both. And if you'll have me, I'd like to build a life with you right here." Tears spilled down Vanessa's cheeks, tears of joy, not sorrow. "We love you too," she whispered. "I think we have from the beginning." Their first kiss was gentle, a promise of all that was to come. A year later, Vanessa stood in the doorway of their home, watching Clayton teaching a now toddling Dawson how to feed the chickens. The little boy's laughter carried across the yard, bright and uninhibited. Her hand rested on her swelling belly, where their second child grew. This pregnancy was nothing like her first, surrounded by love and support instead of fear and isolation. "Mama," Dawson called, spotting her in the doorway. "Chickens." "I see, sweetheart," she called back, her voice clear and strong. Clayton scooped up their son and crossed the yard to her. He kissed her softly, then placed his free hand over hers on her belly. "How are my girls today?" he asked, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Perfect, Vanessa replied. Absolutely perfect. That evening, as they sat together on the porch swing, Dawson asleep between them, Vanessa reflected on how far they had come. From the darkest moments of her life had emerged this extraordinary happiness, a family built not from obligation or circumstance, but from choice and love. Penny, for your thoughts? Clayton asked, his arm warm around her shoulders. I was thinking about names, she said, smiling up at him. For our daughter. And, he prompted. Hope, Vanessa said simply. I'd like to call her Hope. Clayton's eyes shone in the gathering dusk. Hope, he repeated softly. It's perfect. As the stars emerged above the ranch, Vanessa Cole Northwood leaned against her husband's shoulder, content in the knowledge that she would never again lose her voice or her way as long as he was beside her. In the quiet of their home, surrounded by the family they had built together, they watched the future unfold before them like the vast Wyoming sky full of promise, possibility, and love that had found its voice at last.